All right, another week of football talk on Your Lads Football Radio Network for this Tuesday, the 4th of December, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma, and we're going to start the week off with some fantasy football talk in just a few minutes. Scott Engel will join us from RotoExperts.com. Didn't have a chance to talk to Scott last week. He went on the trip to Seattle to watch his Seahawks beat the Niners. Talk a little bit about a player in that game, Dante Pettis, who's got to be a potential pickup for anybody looking for some help at the wide receiver spot. Take a look at some other wide receivers, a couple of quarterbacks, running backs as well, and a kicker on our fantasy segment coming up in just a couple of minutes with Scott Engel. And Dave Cokin will join me after that to talk about the bowl season as it gets underway a week from Saturday. Army-Navy is this Saturday. So we'll take a look at those early bowl games, talk about the interesting ones, maybe some early picks, games at least that I'm circling at this point in time, trends to look forward to in the bowl season, and of course the playoffs with the 4 teams set to go later this month. All right, so this edition of the OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com and covers.com. Covers.com features live scores, stats, and odds, and is considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so Dave Cokin coming up in about 20 minutes from now. But first, before we get to Scott, I'm sure everybody out there has already had their fill with analysis on what happened in the playoff rankings with Oklahoma. Getting a shot to take on Alabama as a 14-point dog. So I understand that Vegas doesn't run the ranking system, but what they do is they offer a very good guide. And look, Vegas knows football. I'm sorry, but they do more than the college football rotating committee. It's just a fact. And so when Vegas says Alabama's a 14-point favorite over Oklahoma, as opposed to, and I'll find out what Dave, what he says the Alabama-Georgia line would have been. I would guess the line would have been somewhere between 4 and 7. So we'll find out from Dave a little bit later. But no question, Georgia, if they would have been in. And look, I'm going to sit here and tell you that I definitely believe Georgia should have been in because I do believe it's all about the 4 best teams. But once again, I say this every year. And I warn everybody about how much I love college football. It's my favorite sport until the regular season comes to an end. And once the regular season comes to an end, then that's it. Because I honestly, I have absolutely, there's no agreement between me and the politics that are involved in college football. You know, the politics basically regarding not just who gets into the playoffs, but also as far as the Heisman. And I know they had rankings. I mean, I got a kick out of the breaking news crawler last night that Haskins was invited to the Heisman or something like that. I love the crawlers nowadays, like how breaking news can be that I don't know that Hankins is in Heisman consideration. There was breaking news on Sunday that the LA Rams won the NFC West. Breaking news. I forget which game I was watching. Breaking news. Rams win NFC West after they beat the Lions. That's breaking news today. The Rams won the NFC West back in September. But it's breaking news that they won and officially clinched, and it was December 2nd. So they officially clinched the division on December 2nd, and that's breaking news. So I love breaking news today. Everybody's got breaking news. To me, breaking news is a major injury, a major trade, a huge development that you were not expecting, or something that was big that you were anticipating that happened. That is what breaking news should be. Not silly things like Haskins is in the Heisman, is going to be there in New York, and the Rams won the NFC West. But So Georgia, Alabama, great game. Terrible outcome if you're just a diehard college football fan, as I went into the weekend warning everybody about how, I just hoped that we were going to get some sort of upsets and some sort of parity. And just like what we saw the week before in college football, we didn't get either. So look, we got some exciting games. There ain't no question about that. But and the reason it's important, I think, for what I'm looking for in parity, I'm not looking for it to be forced, but what I'm looking for is that when a team is clearly playing better than another team, and that team that's clearly playing better is the heavy dog in the game, and that team chokes the game away, it's very disappointing, and it's not good for the sport. I'm sorry, it's just not. I find it interesting when you watch when people put the highlight film together of the Georgia-Alabama game. I don't know if you've noticed, they do not show you the missed field goal. I haven't yet seen the long version of the Georgia-Alabama highlights. I haven't seen it yet. Every highlight I have seen of that game, they have completely skipped over the missed field goal. Because what they've done is they can't wait to get to Jalen Hurts, that they skip over the missed field goal. And by skipping over the missed field goal, you are skipping over the point in the game in which Georgia would have pretty much, you would believe, even though it's, you just knowing Georgia, they probably still would have lost. But you just kind of get the feeling, the way the game was going, that even Georgia, who's choked the last couple of years, the game would have been over. Because they would have been up 3 scores and still had all of the momentum. And it's not just the missed field goal. It's not just that you miss and you go from potentially 3 scores to 2. It's the momentum swing. And then Jalen Hurts comes in. And anybody who's seen football long enough, like I have, knows for a fact that you knew going into that situation that Alabama down at that point in the game, that they had even though they were losing, that they had probably a 90% chance of winning. Because, yeah, of course we know what's coming. Oh, look at this. This is what happened last year. Look at Jalen Hurts coming in to be the hero. Look at who they're playing, a choking dog team, and we know what's going to happen. As soon as Jalen Hurts came into the game, I was like, you just screwed it up, Georgia. You just screwed up your shot. You injured the Heisman favorite all year, and you screwed it up. You still screwed it up. And I tweeted out the other day, I cannot fathom being a Georgia resident who grew up and has been a diehard Falcon Bulldog fan. I could not, as much as I've had to go through so much pain in my life as never having a professional, any team, football, basketball, hockey, baseball, win a championship. None of my teams. And that's pretty sad. But even though I've gone through that, and I've gone through a lot of misery, I've never been through what a Georgia native Bulldogs Falcons fan has gone through the last 3 years. I've never gone through that before. I've never gone through Super Bowl choke of all time, championship game choke maybe of all time, and then SEC championship game choke of all time in 3 years. I honestly don't know what that would feel like. I've been through a lot of chokes. Look, Michigan, Ohio State, I've been through them, but nothing like that. So anyway, we'll talk more about that with Dave Cokin coming up in about 20 minutes from now, 15, 20 minutes. But let's get back to some fantasy football because there is a lot to talk about. The playoffs are beginning in a lot of leagues out there. My playoffs don't begin until next week. And even though I'm in first place, I don't really care about first place in the regular season. As long as I'm in the playoffs, that's all I care about. And I know Scott Engel, my next guest, who is in about 34 leagues, is definitely gearing up for the playoffs. So, Scott, how did your trip to Seattle go? Big win.
Thanks. It went very well. Got to cover the game for the press box. Talk to Chris Carson and Rashad Penny afterwards. And, it seems now that there's a real 1-2 punch in that backfield of Carson just wearing people down and Penny being explosive. Penny was actually saying to me, he said, look, Chris really just wears people down, and then I run right by him. Penny we haven't seen enough of this year.
Yeah.
And he actually said to me that he was feeling like early in the year that he needed more carries to get into a rhythm. But now that he realizes that he could just do a lot with one carry, be one of those running backs, and he can even be explosive with a limited workload. So I think the team is finding a nice combo. Penny is actually very unassuming and, non-egotistical about his role there and feels like he's going to make the most of every opportunity. That's what he was saying, and he certainly did this past week. Carson did suffer a finger injury, and that's the problem with Carson is that he gets banged up a lot, but he's not going to change who he is. Talking to Carson, he said, my style is really to wear the defense down, and he said, quote, make them feel me, that he's going to try to earn every yard. And you see it from Carson's running style, and he's not going to back down. When both those guys are healthy, it's going to be Carson and Penny, I think, and Mike Davis is going to be pushed out of the mix here as much as they like him for depth. But as long as Chris Carson is in there fantasy-wise, he's going to be a good low-end RB2. And, we talk about having handcuffs at this time of year. If you have Carson, you want to roster Penny.
Yeah, next year, of course, that's going to change, and it's just a matter of staying healthy, of course, because that was Penny's issue coming into camp this year. But as long as Penny's healthy, I don't think there's any doubt Penny will be the starter next year, and he definitely needs to get about 15, 20 carries. So he needs to be patient. Again, this is his role this year.
I don't know if we can assume that. The Seahawks really, really like, utilizing a timeshare or a committee. Number one rushing offense in the NFL per game, and they really like Chris Carson. I think we can't assume that Penny is going to be the starter.
Well, that's like saying, well, because I believe he's going to be a fantastic player. If the Seattle Seahawks believe he's just going to be a decent runner with explosiveness,
I don't think it's that either. It's think
one or the other.
Like using a combination of two backs to really give defenses two different looks. I don't think
this year.
Penny's going to be ordinary. I think they'd like both of those guys and want to use both of them.
That's not going to happen. Chris Carson is not Rashad Penny. You don't next year. You don't take again. I didn't say 25 carries. I said between 15, 20 carries. Penny needs to be the guy who gets the majority of the reps. Look, I don't need to be. It does take rocket science to know which player has more potential. One guy was drafted in the first. The other guy was drafted in the seventh. And there's a reason for it. Chris Carson's a nice player. He's definitely a lot better than anybody thought he was going to be, but he's not Rashad Penny. And you don't take the ball out of the hands of a guy who can go 80 yards every time because you just want to wear down the opponent. It's nice this year. I'm okay with it this year. They should stick exactly with what they're doing this year. But in the next few years, Rashad Penny, if you believe he was worth a first-round, early second-round draft pick, and he's an explosive potential big-time top 10 running back in the entire league, he's got to get most of the reps. He just has to.
I see where you're coming from, but, when you have two guys like that, it doesn't matter where Chris Carson is drafted at this point because he's already passed his first year. And, we've seen so many guys, prove the drafters wrong. If they can use both of those guys, if they can give Penny, say, 14 carries and Carson, 9 or 10, even if Penny becomes the lead back, if Chris Carson stays healthy, I don't know fully that he's going away. Now, we can't look at draft capital. Is there any way that you're going to tell me in Denver that Royce Freeman is going to overtake Phillip Daniels anytime soon?
No.
Phillip Lindsay anytime soon?
No, not at all. Freeman's too slow.
Doesn't matter where they drafted.
Freeman's too slow. No. I'm talking about the fact. I'm just relating their status based on their talent. That's all.
Right.
That we all know Rashad Penny is
because Penny's definitely more talented, but Carson has a specific role there.
You said it fine when you said 9 carries. When you said 9 carries and Penny 15 and Carson 9, 10 carries, that's exactly what I'm saying. But that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is Carson is basically getting more carries. He's getting more reps, and that's fine this year. But next year, it's sort of like the Minnesota Vikings situation, and I got Dalvin Cook, and I know there's talk about, will DeFilippo be a head coach next year? Well, ain't not the way he's going now, because how he hamstrings that rushing attack and does not give Dalvin Cook touches drives you crazy, especially after what happened against the Patriots on Sunday. When these coordinators take the ball out of the hands of playmakers. Now, Vikings, worse off. Of course, I understand what Seattle's doing because it's working. Rookie Penny, I'm fine with that. But the Vikings, that is just a shame. That's just terrible that Dalvin Cook isn't getting enough touches.
Well, here's the thing, though. It drives a lot of owners crazy when they want guys to get more carries, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. We can go back to C.J. Spiller with that. When he was with the Buffalo Bills. You have to remember with Dalvin Cook and Rashad Penny, and I know you know this, is that they're rookies, and just because they're more talented and more dynamic, there are other reasons why they don't get on the field as often. Now with Cook, it's injuries, and that's definitely slowed his development because these guys are not just asked to run the ball; they're asked to pass block.
Yeah, but that's a completely different.
Run route.
No, well, Cook's in his second year, but he was hurt last year. But it's the different approach because if you took Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray and switched them to Seattle with this offense, the way the Seattle's going, Dalvin Cook would be getting about 15 carries, and Latavius Murray would be getting about 10, 15 carries, and that's fine. But DeFilippo's not running anybody. He's just running the ball 10 times a game. And it's just ridiculous. He's going, here you go, Kirk Cousins. I guess we gave you all the money, so I'm going to ride you. And it's just, after what Cook did to the Patriots on Sunday, it was an absolute shame. Just a shame of how he's just constantly throwing the football and not running. It's just, there was a couple of plays in the game, too, when they had C.J. Ham in, and they got Cook. And it's like, and he got Kirk Cousins. He could decide, do I go left to Cook or right to Ham? And both times you threw the ball Ham. What is wrong with you? You don't throw the ball to this guy. He's like a fullback. You got Cook over there wide open. Get him the ball. So you know what? That's why the Vikings are the Vikings, and that's why Seattle. And this is why they did a great job by bringing in Solari and Schottenheimer last year. Nobody really thought anything of it. Bevel was past his due date for a couple of years, and they bring these guys in, and they combine because Schottenheimer had all that success with the Jets running the football, first in the league, and that's exactly what Carroll wanted out of Schottenheimer, and Solari with that ability to beef, as far as his offensive line acumen. So it was a great combination. It's been a great combination, and it's also helped out Russell Wilson tremendously, and that's why Seattle's having a successful season.
Yeah, and Wilson is on pace to throw 39 touchdown passes with the least attempts ever in the history of the NFL. Just doing such a great job of picking their spots to try to hit the big plays. I was at Pete Carroll's press conference on Friday and got to ask him, despite the fact that you run the ball so much, what about the fact that Tyler Lockett and David Moore both had 100-yard games last week? Yeah, right. And he said, look, we know there's a passing league, but we're going to do what we do. Sure. At the same time, we've generated 10 explosive plays per week each of the last 3 weeks coming into the 49ers game. Yep. So we're looking to pick their spots. And Chris Carson said it after the game too, that the run is setting up the pass absolutely perfectly. Yeah. And we talked about the undue criticism I thought Wilson was getting. It seems like Schottenheimer doesn't want him to scramble around.
Yeah, who would? You don't want to.
As much as he used to.
No, yeah.
And improve play from the offensive line, like I was talking to Dwayne Brown too.
That's right.
And he was just talking about how much Jermaine Defetti is improved. Improved play has allowed him to hang in the pocket as well and just take his shots.
Well, look, it's sort of like Houston. And I'm even more impressed with Houston and Seattle because Houston doesn't even have the talent Seattle has. And it's probably not a coincidence that Dwayne Brown's on Seattle now. That's probably the biggest difference. But Houston's offensive line situation looked so bad as the season got underway, and they had those early struggles. that what they've done to turn that around and again make things even that much easier for Deshaun Watson. And of course they have Hopkins. See, Russell Wilson doesn't have a Hopkins. That's the big difference between Deshaun Watson coming up with some bigger pass plays at certain times, or he has a number one. I think Hopkins is the best receiver in the league this season. And that's the thing, sometimes you look at talent and you go, look at them on paper and you go, there's no way they're going to be able to accomplish this. But great coaching, that goes a long way. Scheming what works best for your team. And again, I don't think anybody thought that Lamar Miller was going to be a significant fantasy running back this season, and he has been.
Yeah, that team has set a record for most wins after losing their first three.
Yeah.
And everything is clicking on their offense. I think it's good coaching too.
That's right.
Lamar Miller looks more intense running at the second level. Everything's clicking for that team. I predicted them to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl in the preseason, and after 3 weeks, I was like, well, there goes that. And then it turned out I was wrong about being wrong.
Well, look, I think it's going to be a great postseason with the Chargers playing well and Houston looking like they are, and you got the Chiefs.
Nobody's talking about Houston as a contender, it seems.
Yeah, well, I don't know what
they
they're...
mentioned Pittsburgh, New England, the Chargers.
Yeah.
I never hear anybody mentioning Houston. This team is 9-0 since week 3.
Yeah, probably because I think what they need to do is the next thing that has to happen is they have to beat one of the juggernauts. They have to beat one of the top teams for everybody to be convinced. But look, as long as Watt's healthy, Clowney's healthy, and they are, Watson's there, and they're all healthy together, and they can run the football, and they got Hopkins, they definitely can win the Super Bowl. All I know is after the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, there's a bunch of teams that can win the Super Bowl this year. NFL just isn't the same as it was even just a few years ago. Let's just rip through players to keep an eye on for the last couple of minutes here, Scott. At your game,
there's one story. I'm sorry. There's one story that blows away any other right now in fantasy football. Mike Tomlin has announced that James Conner is out for Week 14, and I've been saying it for weeks that you have to get the immediate NFL backups of your fantasy starters. We saw it with Kareem Hunt. You had to have Spencer Ware or run to the waiver wire to get him. Now Jalen Samuels, who Tomlin says is going to become part of a committee, he's going to lead the committee right now. We saw last week, and we saw it the last time Conner was hurt. He came right in, and he was the guy. Last week he caught a touchdown pass, came right in. Jalen Samuels is going to be the hottest pickup in fantasy football maybe all season since people were picking up James Conner, who didn't draft him. Because not only is he going to be the top running back in a featured offense, but on sites like Yahoo Sports, he qualifies at tight end. And the tight end position is so desolate. You're talking about something unofficially unforeseen ever in fantasy history, where a guy gets 15 carries and can have a bunch of passes, can play for you at tight end. that people are going to blow their entire fab budgets for maybe what's left. The only time I can think of something like this is when Marcus Colston, in his rookie year, qualified at tight end in fantasy football, and Joe Webb qualified at wide receiver and was playing quarterback for the Vikings one week, but he flamed out. But comparing it to the Colston thing, Colston didn't even carry the ball. I've been doing this for 23 years, my friend, and I can't ever recall a situation like this.
Yeah, Samuels came out of college as that Swiss Army knife type of player that could be fit anywhere on your offense. And that's looking like that's going to help out fantasy players this week. And you know what? Just because he's out this week, Connor, don't mean he won't be out again in Week 15. So I wouldn't be surprised. If he's out this early for this week's game, he could very well be out a couple weeks. So that would be a big deal there if you wind up getting him. And other running backs, you just mentioned the situation now that you have where now you got to look at possibly C.J. Anderson as a pickup. Now, I don't know if that's going to be official.
They didn't sign him. So they signed Kendrick West. But, whoever they...
West.
West is not the handcuff because he's been on the street all year. Right now, I think if Ware was to go down, it might be some sort of committee led by Damian Williams.
Wow, that's just... Yeah. I mean, they went with more familiarity, even though West is nowhere near as good as Ware, even as a backup. Dixon is back in if he could ever stay healthy. That's something to keep an eye on as Edwards' backup. We know the Ravens want to run the football now with Jackson. Martin's another guy, too, right? And also, by the way, for Oakland, And also, the guy who is my sleeper pick of the NFL draft is a guy you need to keep an eye on. Now, I don't know if it's going to matter much if Melvin Gordon comes back as early as this week, but trust me, what you saw on Sunday night with Jackson was every bit for real. Jackson should never have dropped to the 7th round. It just shows you the NFL scouts like Carson, they miss a lot of guys. And Jackson was a guy that had a great 4-year college running career in the Big Ten at Northwestern. He's the real deal. I think once he gets a chance with another team in a couple of years to start, he's going to be somebody to keep an eye on. But I think he might wind up outdoing Eckler again this week if Gordon doesn't play.
Yeah, he might. He had a great run there in the fourth quarter. But the early word is that Gordon is going to return this week.
Okay.
So not as hard to pick up the Samuels, and then you got Wilson out in San Francisco, who looks really, really good, and Matt Breed is very banged up, and his status is uncertain for this upcoming week. Josh Wilson was a guy who looked really good, especially on screen passes there. He hurt his foot, came back. Alfred Morris was inactive, and they're going to give Wilson a chance here. But again, a lot of what you see coming off the waiver wire right now, unless it's like a Samuels or a Ware or something like that, you don't want to pluck these guys off the free agent list and plug them into your starting lineup in a lot of cases.
If you have a guy that is, if you're really a little bit unsettled with your veteran quarterback, a guy who's throwing some decent numbers out there, and you're not even totally excited if you have a backup on your team, wouldn't you take a look at Allen?
You would, because of all the rushing yards, just like you did with your Lamar Jackson, although it's much less hype. But, if you had somebody like Matthew Stafford or Andy Dalton before you got hurt, if you had an underwhelming quarterback, you're very likely probably not in your fantasy playoffs right now. But, if you had, say, Tom Brady and you've been able to navigate it through, it sounds crazy, but right now, you have to pick up Josh Allen and consider him starting him over Tom Brady or even Aaron Rodgers.
Sure, I get it. Yeah, absolutely. Or, you definitely have him as a real good backup in case you get to Week 16. You're in the Super Bowl, and who knows?
Maybe somebody gets hurt, yeah.
You could get somebody hurt. You could be on a team that's already clinched.
If video comes out about somebody, you just don't know.
All right. And also, by the way, you would have to consider at kicker, if you don't really think that your premier kicker has done anything this year, you gotta consider the Jets' Myers. I mean, the guy has just. I know last week was something that doesn't often happen, but moving forward, the Jets are going to settle for a lot more field goals.
Yeah, and here's the thing: it's like, and I said it all year. We had this conversation. People don't pay attention to the kicker. They just think of a name that they know and they plug them in, and they figure it's all random. And Kamani Fairbairn, like the second best kicker in all of fantasy football right now, scored 21 points this past week and boosted me to some victories this past week. And towards the end of the season, he was only less than 38% owned in some leagues. People just don't pay enough attention to the kicker because, I had Tyreek Hill not play well, and Kamani Fairbairn got me usually what Tyreek Hill would get me.
All right, Scott. Thanks a lot. We'll talk more again next week, and we'll update all your playoffs. You're in how many playoffs?
10 leagues. I made the playoffs in 7. First place overall in 3.
Okay.
4 first-round buys. I have 5 teams with 10 wins and 1 with 11.
All right. Well, best of luck. We'll update your
10 leagues, not 34.
Sure. Yeah, I know. I like to exaggerate.
No, because that percentage would not sound good.
No, it wouldn't. That's right. You got to remind everybody. It's not 7 of 34, 7 of 10.
All right. And check us out on rotoexperts.com for your playoff push.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, we slashed the price for our premium package.
Okay. Awesome. Scott, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Thank you.
You got it. All right. That is Scott Engel from rotoexperts.com. And, never know what we're going to get from Scott from week to week here on the show. But we had a little bit more to talk about because of his venture out to Seattle. He was pumped to talk about Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, and the Seattle Seahawks. And I would be too if I'm a Seattle fan. I would be too. How bad. I just love it because I was watching. Who was it? It was Damian Woody. Was it last week? I think so. Last week, maybe. Damian Woody criticizing. No, he wasn't criticizing. No, it was. I think it was last week. I don't know. Last week or whatever, because Seattle's won a few straight. It was last week. I tried after the Carolina win. And he was praising Seattle because of how things, are they a legitimate playoff team? And Damian Woody, he recognized Mike Solari when he was talking about Seattle. He never mentioned Brian Schottenheimer. And that is purposeful because Damian Woody is in the New York media. Damian Woody, former New York Jet. Damian Woody understands how all the New York media and a lot of New York Jet fans have been completely brainwashed. Well, I know the fans have been brainwashed by the New York media into believing Brian Schottenheimer is an idiot. A guy that's an idiot who just happened to lead the league in rushing when he had Mark Sanchez as a rookie quarterback, took the Jets with a rookie quarterback as their coordinator to the AFC Championship game and back-to-back AFC Championship games. Okay? That's what kind of an idiot Brian Schottenheimer is. That he can get a team. I don't care how good Rex Ryan's defense was at the time, but he's got to make sure that a rookie quarterback can make his way to the Super Bowl too. And Mark Sanchez played well in the playoffs, by the way. And they're the number one rushing attack when everybody's zeroed in on the running game. So don't tell me he's an idiot, okay? He just has never had a quarterback before, ever, Schottenheimer. Until this season, what a coincidence, he's having his most productive season as coordinator. But still, Damian Woody doesn't want to talk about him. He'd rather talk about Mike Solari. Because if he talks about Schottenheimer, he's basically he's giving credence to the fact that, maybe he's actually not as bad as we all thought. So I guess I'm wrong. But he's not going to do that. All right, so we've got about 15 minutes to go here for the next segment as we take a look at what's going on. One NFL game we're going to talk about. We got a lot of college to get to with Dave Cokin from Covers.com. And Dave, thanks a lot for checking in with us again this week.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Let's go.
All right, Dave. So I'll tell you what, let's get the NFL game out of the way first. That's the game, Tennessee going up against Jacksonville on Thursday night. Tennessee's a 4.5-point favorite right now. They've won three straight up ATS against the Jags, including a 9-6 win. Week 3 is a 10-point dog. They get the big win, comeback win against the Jets to save their season. They've been a much better team at home. They seem to have the Jags number. Let's not forget. Now, last year's games, I think we need to remind everybody that those games were I don't think they really mattered as much. So it wasn't like the Jags, it was the best of the Jags against Tennessee. So I don't want to look at that. I care more about what happened this year. I don't care that the Jags won the game against the Colts. That was just an ugly football game. Jags didn't prove to me anything that they're going to get out of this shell. It's not a game I would touch except for it's Thursday night. So I still have to kind of lean towards Tennessee, even though, like I said, it's probably not a game I would touch.
Yeah, I might lean to Jacksonville. The main reason is the Titans, they're an average football team, and they're no good as favorites. They've been favored 3 times this year. They lost 2 of those outright and barely beat a bad team over the weekend. And I took the Jets in that game. So, they're being overrated to me. This is a very ordinary football team, and ordinary football teams laying points are generally going to get you beat. Jaguars at least are coming off a win, and the defense will be feeling good about itself coming in. Defense was brilliant in that game on Sunday. I mean, you shut out Andrew Luck. That's pretty good. So I don't know that the Jaguars are going to have to score that many points to at least have a real good chance to cover this game.
All right. We'll talk more NFL over the next couple of days with Mark Lawrence and with Teddy Savransky coming up. But let's get to the bowl games, and the playoffs are set. Both double-digit odds for the bowl games, and that's because the committee did what they always do, and they put in 4 teams that they want to fit their criteria. Whatever their criteria was this year, it is what it is. But they obviously didn't want the 4 best teams. They just wanted to say, okay, well, we're going to...
It's not about the 4 best teams. That's not how it works. It's about Georgia doesn't belong in there. Georgia, if you're asking me whether Georgia's one of the 4 best teams, absolutely. But that's not how playoffs are determined. I mean, you got to win.
Well, that's not how the committee determines it.
Well, that's not how anything determines it. You have to win the game. How many years have we had the best team not make it to the World Series in baseball? It happens constantly. It didn't happen last year.
Well, but they played in the playoffs.
You have to win the game.
Yeah, but they were in the playoffs. Georgia didn't even get a chance to play in the playoffs.
Well, you cannot. Look, the whole idea is to take as much opinion out of these playoffs as possible. And if you put Georgia in, it's strictly on opinion.
Well, again, but they put Georgia in, but you just said it. They are one of the top four. See, that's what I'm saying. That's the difference.
Right,
we're on the same page, is that but it should be about the best four. That's what I'm saying. And I'm not saying you have your opinion. That's fine. I just believe it should be about the best four. That is why I always hate college football when the season ends, because I never get what I want. I want logic. And college football doesn't work on logic.
Unless you have an 8-team playoff, you are not going to have logic.
Yeah, and
it's that simple.
Yeah, and again, it's right here. They're looking at it, and especially because it's two teams from the SEC. It would have to be a rematch, and they just want to get rid of that. They're going to give Oklahoma a shot. Now they're a 14-point dog. Let me ask you a question: what would Alabama Georgia line be if they did play?
Be pretty close to what it was last week. In the same line, maybe a little lower. Because Georgia played them tough, so you'd probably be looking maybe 10. Somewhere in that area. Alabama's still going to be a good-sized favorite.
All right. Anyway, I love it, the fact that, once again, the national media all season with their greatest team of all time nonsense looked like a complete bunch of morons. And Alabama got – and you know what? And I got to say this. The one thing I'm okay with Georgia losing is that as much as Georgia is one of the top four, fact is that it probably wouldn't have been good, because chances are they probably would have played them again, probably led them again, and then probably lost again. And why see that again? They've had their chances. I'm sick of seeing Georgia choke up against Alabama the last couple of years. The problem is that once we get past the Kyler Murray versus Alabama defense, I mean, how long? I mean, yeah, the buildup is going to be fun, and then it's going to be gone in about 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's a mismatch. Alabama should win the game by about 3 touchdowns. It's not close.
That might even be generous.
Well, 20 is good enough for me, and that's about what my power ratings have Alabama by roughly 20 in this game. It's Alabama's just, they are that good, and they kind of showed it on Saturday. I mean, they're down. They've lost their starting quarterback. Hurts comes in and plays absolutely phenomenal football. I mean, I've never seen him throw the ball that good. And Alabama comes back and wins the game. I got to give them credit. I mean, they played their worst game against a really good team and find a way to come back and win.
Yeah, well, Oklahoma, and that's the thing. Oklahoma is not Georgia. They don't have anywhere near the defense, and so Alabama's not going to have to. Even if Alabama played a bad game, Oklahoma doesn't have the defense to stop them. So it's not going to matter. Now, I think if Alabama plays a bad game, then okay, maybe Oklahoma covers. Maybe it's a 10-point game, but I don't expect Alabama to play another bad game. That's asking way too much. As far as Clemson and Notre Dame, this is more intriguing because I'm still not sure what to make for Clemson. I still think, no doubt, that if any team outside Alabama wins, it's Clemson. I was expecting more from the Pitt game, but then I have to throw into the equation the weather conditions. And it slowed Clemson down, and it was perfectly set up for Pitt. And so even though it was another one of those blah performances from Clemson that we've seen over the past month, I got to think that the weather might have something to do with it. But this game, I don't know. Well, I mean, this is completely different.
It's something else that had to do with it. Is that Pittsburgh was a mismatch against Clemson, and Clemson knew it going in. And they just, you weren't going to get Clemson at your best in that game, and they still won and covered.
Well, you know who I'm worried about? I'm worried about Trevor Lawrence, because I don't know if I've seen a game yet, especially against a competition like he's going to face here at Notre Dame, where is he going to step up and make plays that, say, Bryant wouldn't have, which is the whole reason that they ditched Bryant and went with Lawrence. I don't know. I mean, we know talent-wise he has the talent passing game better than Bryant, but can you show it to me against a really good defense like Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean, that's the intrigue here. I think the line is a shade high, not enough for me to get involved in. I made it 10.5. So, Notre Dame's not supposed to win the game, but 10.5-point dogs, if that's the right price, are certainly capable of winning the games, and the pressure's all on Clemson here. So it could be a fascinating game. It's clearly it's the more interesting matchup.
Oh, yeah.
By far.
Oh, yeah. If you're just saying, hey, I got to take a chance on a dog, or you're definitely taking the chance on the Irish.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, and that's actually not a bad money line play to take. Take a chance. Why not? Because if Lawrence doesn't have a good game, Notre Dame should be there all the way through to the entire game, and it's going to be up to, like we saw in the Georgia-Alabama game. I mean, if Georgia kicks a field goal and goes up 17, that game's probably over. So it's one of those things where you got to make the plays. And by the way, that's what separates Alabama most of all against all these other teams is the fact that they – even when they're playing bad, they still don't do anything to shoot themselves in their foot. They allow their opposition to make dumb plays, to do stupid things, for the coach to go for a 4th and 11 punt at midfield. They just play football. They don't choke. They don't do anything stupid, and they allow the opposition to do dumb things. And that's also what makes it so difficult for anybody to beat Alabama.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody will.
All right, as far as the bowl season, what kind of trends can you throw out there for the listeners that they should keep an eye on? For me, I know about coaching changes, which might affect, of course, game planning. You've got you got to keep an eye, obviously, on injuries and potential players that are going to be disciplined, especially the longer we go in the process for games in a couple of weeks. Conference, do you pay attention to conference records after the first week or two?
For me, every game is individual. I'm not a trend guy anyway. So,
but I mean, the conference record isn't about trends. It's about one conference is obviously beating other conferences. So doesn't that make them better?
See, to me, it's not a conference power rating thing. It's still an individual power rating thing, and how one team matches up with another, and then you start to dissect the information going in. I'll give you a quick example.
Okay.
We're already seeing some weird stuff with the North Texas-Utah State game because Wells has accepted the Texas Tech job. He's taking the 2 coordinators with him. He wants to take the entire offense with him, in fact. But what makes this weird is that Wells has requested permission to be on the sideline for the game, even though there's going to be an interim coach. That's weird.
All right.
Okay, I mean, that to me is a potential distraction. And it's the type of thing where I mean, Utah State's better than North Texas, but I think this could be a game where North Texas has more focus on the game than Utah State does.
Okay.
So we've already seen some line movement in that game, so I'm not the only one who's thinking that might be the case. And I might be taking a long look at North Texas here, despite the fact that it's not a great matchup for them because of the off-the-field information. And that's what you get. That's why I wait longer on the bowl games than I do in the regular season, where I like to play Monday and Tuesday if I can, sometimes Sunday night. But in the bowls, I have a tendency to wait longer because of the stuff you mentioned. There's more off-the-field stuff that ends up factoring into bowl games than at any time in the regular season.
Yeah, very difficult. I mean, it's not, to me, the bowl season is not a season to make money in handicapping. It's just too crazy. It's just.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love the bowl season. Because I've got all this time to work on each game. The beat writers for the local teams do extensive coverage, way more extensive than they do in the regular season where they're on tighter deadlines. And you can really get some good stuff following the beat writers, especially for the smaller, the minor bowls. You're going to get some really good information out there, and you can use it to find some really good bets.
All right. So you've historically done well then, the bowl seasons.
It's been real good for me, and I had a good season anyway.
Okay.
I'm looking to build on it here.
As far as, lastly, any intriguing games that just, you just look at right off the bat and say, this is a game for whatever reason. Last year, the Central Florida game against Auburn, you could kind of tell Auburn really didn't care.
Yeah,
I don't know where
you might see the same thing again this year because I'm going to tell you, Central Florida is going to be out of their mind up for this game, and I'm not sure LSU is. So that you might see a repeat scenario of what you saw last year. Ed Orgeron's going to have a tough time getting his team excited for this, and UCF's going to be fired up. The other one that jumps out right now, and it really jumps out, is Urban Meyer coaching for the last time.
There you go.
And I think this will be the last game he coaches.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
That team is going to be out of their heads fired up against Washington. And you saw a big line move this morning, and I think it's the right way to move.
Where is it now?
5.5, and it's going to keep going up.
So what, does it start at 3 or something?
Let's see. I can
4
look it up
maybe?
real quick.
So that's one of those games, though, knowing that line is going to go even further up, you take that now.
Well, yeah, it actually it's gone back up to where it opened. Okay, the early money was on Washington.
Really? Is that before the Urban Meyer news?
That was before the Meyer news.
Got it.
Now
Okay.
it's going back up to 5.5. I
Okay.
think it's going to close. I think it closes close to 7.
I agree. Yeah. Because you're absolutely right. Because first of all, they're better anyway than Washington. What you got to do is watch the Washington-Utah game. I mean, oh my God. I mean, Washington couldn't score against a team that had a quarterback that couldn't do anything.
Yeah. The thing of it was, I think it might have been a bigger game for Washington, and that's so important in these bowls is trying to figure out which team wants it more. I'm not sure Ohio State was going to have that much interest in
Well,
this.
now we know.
But they will now.
Yeah, now we know. Yeah. So, again, I still would have preferred – I still liked Ohio State. But, yeah, you're right. Maybe there would have been a little bit of a disappointment that they didn't get to the playoffs. But you can forget all that now. So, yeah, I agree. So, yeah, it's a great point. That's something we'll keep an eye on. And we'll preview the bowl season next week. We'll try to have extensive time to go over a lot more of these games and get some insight. And then you're just going to have picks. Are you going to do anything before the season, before the bowl season begins with a whole bunch of games? Or are you just going to start off 1 week at a time, one game at a time?
No, I've already played 2. I'm waiting on a third one because I think I'll get a better number. And, it's just a daily process. And,
okay.
And I try and move when I think the price is right.
Okay.
And because I want to get the most bang for the buck. So that's the whole idea.
Dave, I appreciate it. We'll have a lot more fun going over the bowl games and more NFL next week.
I know you wanted to mention NFL teasers, so I want to give you this real quick.
Okay.
Simple teaser strategy in the NFL. And the NFL is the only sport I recommend teasing. But it's simple. What you want to do is cross 3 and 7. That's giving you your best opportunity to win. Crossing 3 and 7 both ways. So you're taking favorites of 7.5, 8, or 8.5 down 6 points. You're taking underdogs of plus 1.5, 2, or 2.5 up 6 points. You're crossing the 2 biggest key numbers in the NFL and getting them both your way, the 3 and the 7. If you follow that basic strategy on NFL teasers, you're actually putting the odds in your favor.
All right, so you're looking for favorites that are about 8, 8.5, and dogs that are about 1, 1.5, and those are your two.
Not 1, because 1 on a 6-point teaser.
1.5. Got to be 1.5.
So
Got it.
You want 1.5, 2, and 2.5 on the dogs. 7.5, 8, and 8.5 on the favorites.
All right, and that would be a what? That would be a 2 teams. You get 6 points in the 2 teams.
Right.
Got it.
Now, if you can do better than that with your book, then you can stretch those numbers a little bit.
And those are straight bets, correct?
Right.
Got it. Okay, interesting. We'll try to definitely get into maybe some teaser picks too, as we look for more games and such. So maybe we'll get into something like maybe a teaser of the week next week. Can you do that?
There you go. Yeah, and it'll probably be on a couple of 8-point favorites.
All right, sounds good. So that'll be on next week. We'll start getting a little bit more into some exotics here on the show. So, Dave, appreciate it, as always, and enjoy the Army-Navy game.
Go Army.
All right, I agree. Excellent. Hey, go Army against Houston in the Armed Forces Bowl. That's a good one.
And they probably will. That'll probably end up on my card.
I think so. Thanks, Dave.
All right, Greg.
All right, take care. That's Dave Cokin. And again, Dave is available at Dave Cokin. That is his Twitter handle. And, of course, you can also check out his website at smokeandcokin.com. And any inquiries by email, you can email Dave at cokin@cox.net. Now, some of the games that I highlighted as far as games that intrigue me the most, and usually there's very little. As I always say, these bowl games, these matchups are so bad. It's heartbreaking. There's so many games and there's so few matchups. And the other thing I hate is when they do the bowl game matchups, like I wind up seeing the brackets in college basketball. Like when you get the brackets out and you've only got like 6 teams you're really high on, including your favorite team, and then they match up like 2 of your teams against each other. It's like you've got all this entire bracket thing. Like last year, I had a region of like 90% of the teams I liked were all in one region, and it drove me nuts. This year, I got 2 teams that I pulled for. Well, one was Iowa State, because I'm growing into a Cyclone fan, and also, of course, that they're outplaying the experts, and I like that as well. And Matt Campbell is a coach on the rise against Washington State, who's been one of the best spread teams of the season, one of my best spread teams, and I don't hold any ill will in that snowstorm loss against Washington in the Apple Cup. But, of course, let's put those 2 teams in the Alamo Bowl, so I can't take both of them in another game, even though I'm a little bit weary of Washington State and how they might react, and we don't even know if Mike Leach is going to be coaching Washington State by the Alamo Bowl. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the 2 games, I think there's only 2 games that intrigue me the most. 2 games or 1? Well, one of the games is one of the early games next Saturday, the Las Vegas Bowl, Fresno and Arizona State. We'll talk more about that with Robert Gagliardi on Thursday on this show, following Teddy Savransky. Teddy covers. But Fresno beats Boise, huge win for the program, and they go up against Arizona State. I mean, honestly, I would have preferred to not see these 2 teams play each other, though. But it is a really nice matchup. But this is another game because I would have liked to have root. I mean, it would have been nice to root for Herm Edwards because he's done a lot better than people thought. And then you look at Fresno, and of course, I've been behind Fresno all season, so I don't like the matchup handicapping wise, but I think it's a very nice first, definitely the best bowl of the first weekend next week and next Saturday, the Las Vegas Bowl. The Bulldogs are a 4.5-point favorite in that game. Interesting. We'll have to keep. And by the way, next week, I'm not sure what show it's going to be. We might even just actually. What am I saying? It'll be our first draft show. But I'm going to get Dan Shanka back on. He hasn't been on all season. I've kind of been waiting for it because Dan, of course, is going to be a big player as usual as we start talking about the NFL draft for 2019. But Dan will make an appearance next week on the network. We're going to go before the bowl season begins. We're going to talk a lot about players that are going to be, especially guys like Harry, the wide receiver at Arizona State. So we're going to talk a lot about the players to keep an eye on for the bowl season as well as for the 2019 NFL draft. So that'll be on next week. I haven't scheduled it yet, but as far as the day and time, but we'll have that going on next week. What was the other intriguing matchup? Well, I do like the West Virginia-Syracuse game. That should be a fun game. That's the Camping World Bowl on the 28th. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that was the one. I mean, not a lot. I mean, there isn't like a bowl game where I go, wow, I can't wait for that game. Wow, that's a good one. Ooh, I like that matchup. Ooh, that's intriguing. Seriously, there's none of them. All the possibilities they could have had, and there's not one game where I go, ooh, this is really going to be good. Can't wait for that one. But I love the Urban Meyer leaving Ohio State, blitzing Washington game. Definitely like that Rose Bowl game. Now, I don't know what to expect from Georgia in the Sugar against Texas because we could see a Georgia team that is reeling from the loss against Alabama. So that is something to keep an eye on. Texas getting 11 in that one. I don't know if I agree with Dave about LSU, except that Central Florida is getting 7.5. Because see, last year Auburn lost the chance for a championship, for a national championship when they lost the SEC championship game. LSU was never pretty much going to the SEC championship game, so there was no big letdown for LSU. So I think that's important. And I honestly think LSU, believe it or not, I trust LSU and Ed Orgeron more than I do Gus Malzahn at Auburn. And you know what was really funny was hearing that Jarrett Stidham is going to go to the NFL draft. Jarrett Stidham. I mean, are you kidding me? Who would draft him? There's no way when I draft Jarrett Stidham. And you know what? He probably will get drafted. I mean, I laughed when the Steelers drafted Landry Jones in the 4th round. I mean, I couldn't laugh any harder when that happened. So if Landry Jones can get drafted in the 4th round, I guess Jarrett Stidham can get drafted. But that's pretty funny. Let's see. What games do intrigue me? Speaking of Auburn, is Purdue getting 4.5 against Auburn. I mean, I could see Purdue pretty stoked up about Bromstang and Music City Bowl, and I could see Purdue being a nice choice against Auburn there. So I think Purdue may not be bad. Hawaii, I love Hawaii against Louisiana Tech. I mean, this is not a very good Louisiana Tech team this year. And Hawaii, they just beat San Diego State at San Diego State. So I like Hawaii. It's a home game for them, and they're only a 2-point favorite. And I love Army, 3-point favorite against Houston. I mean, Houston still has guys out. I mean, Oliver said he's not playing in the game. The quarterback's out. I mean, definitely Army against Houston. I like UAB against NIU. I mean, just look, UAB ain't going to choke the way Buffalo did. Another team that choked, Buffalo. But UAB looked awfully good in their win against Middle Tennessee, and they'll get Early back by then. And I don't care, the backup had his moments, but Early's better. So Early's got to be healthy, and that'll be good because he's got, a couple of weeks before that game. And, Northwestern, I know that they didn't cover against Ohio State the first time. The dog situation didn't work, but that was a late cover by Ohio State. And Northwestern was right there in the game. And, look, they turned the ball over too much, Northwestern. That's why they lost that game. But, again, look, Huntley could come back from Utah. Matter of fact, he's going to have a month to come back. That's the only thing I'd be worried about. Huntley comes back, that's different. All right? But that Shelley kid plays. For any reason, Huntley has an issue once again, and he regresses and he can't play, then I would definitely take Northwestern. Huntley plays, that would be different. And the other one that intrigues me, the last one that intrigues me is Wake Forest getting 4 against Memphis, because that is all about psychologically. I mean, Wake Forest, nobody expected them to make a bowl. They played their best football late, destroyed Duke. I think they found themselves a quarterback, too, this kid Newman. We'll talk more about that with Jerry Ratcliffe on the ACC Football Report on Thursday when we preview the bowl season for the ACC. And Memphis, what did we tell you about Memphis? We warned you. They're a choking dog football program, at least the last couple of years. They cannot win big games. They couldn't. Once again, they had a lead against Central Florida, this time without Mackenzie Milton, and they couldn't beat him again. So, no, Memphis is just overrated. That's all. They just can't beat anybody that they're supposed to beat, and they got to be feeling really down on themselves. Well, Wake is feeling really good about themselves, and I think that matters in a bowl game. So that's the Birmingham Bowl on the 22nd. Oh, and by the way, the Michigan-Florida game, can you please gag me? Please. Somebody gag me with a spoon or a knife even. Do I really need to see Michigan and Florida again? I mean, Michigan played Florida last year to open the season. And then Michigan played Florida in the Outback Bowl in 2017. And then in the 2017 Outback Bowl. And then Michigan, and that was on New Year's. And then Michigan played Florida in the Orange Bowl. Excuse me, no, not the Outback Bowl. What am I saying? They played Florida in the Citrus Bowl in 2015. Excuse me. So they played Florida in 2015 Citrus Bowl, and they played them last year to open the season. So this will be the third time to play Florida. Let's see, 2015. Where was that? 2015? Yeah, 2015, 16, 17, 18. What, third time in 5 years? Third time in 4 years? Something. I think it's third in 5. I don't need to see Michigan and Florida again. Why do I want... And you know what? I'm getting sick of this Big Ten SEC thing because it's like the same matchups every year. I don't want to see Michigan and South Carolina either, or those types of matchups. I mean, it would have been better if... I was actually hoping they were going to pit Michigan against Central Florida. I would have looked up for that game. So, yeah, that's depressing. I had a depressing enough time with the Michigan-Ohio State game, and now you expect me to care about Michigan-Florida? No, thank you. Don't care. I'll just be fast-forwarding through that game. I won't even watch that game live. Don't care. Sorry. I'm too old. Don't care about Michigan Peach Bowls against Florida. All right, so that's going to wrap it up here on the OFN Today. Want to thank Scott Engel from RotoExperts.com for joining us once again, talking fantasy football. Hopefully, give you enough tips to pick up some players this week, including Mr. Jalen Samuels from NC State. And, of course, Dave Cokin from Covers.com. And we'll talk more NFL and college football over the next couple of days. Mark Lawrence tomorrow on the OFN Today, and Teddy Zavransky on Thursday as well. And ACC Football Report will be on Thursday, too. And Mitch Light is going to join me, of course, for our College Football Weekly show, which will air on Thursday, too, as we'll wrap up the season. We'll get Mitch's opinion on the top four and an early prognosis of the playoffs and the bowls and all that other stuff. And, of course, coaching changes and much more. So that's coming up on our OFN College Football Weekly on Thursday. So that's our week ahead here on the OFN, on the R-Lads Football Radio Network. For Dave Cokin, for Scott Engel, Alpha, Mike Foxtrot.